Hello, I'm Kamal Santamaria. This is Counting the Cost on Al Jazeera, your weekly look at the world of business and economics. This week, Samsung. The fire's been put out, but just how much damage has been unleashed by its faulty flagship smartphone? Ask yourself this: would you still buy a Samsung phone while there's so little clarity over what went wrong? And we examine Africa's largest and most lucrative mobile phone market. Tech investors are excited about the opportunities in Nigeria, but they also want widespread infrastructure improvements if the mobile industry is to keep up with demand. And Boeing lands a deal with Qatar Airways worth nearly $19 billion, one of the largest in the airline manufacturer's history. Qatar Airways chief executive tells us about his ambitious plans. So when a leading consumer brand kills off an entire line of smartphone, in fact one of its flagship ones, you know the situation is pretty serious. But so it is at Samsung. The Galaxy Note 7 is no more after literally going up in flames. You know the story by now, the faulty batteries which exploded, actually burning some users and certainly putting the rest on edge. Now the story is if Samsung can recover. It's already slashed third quarter profit estimates by a third. Billions have been wiped off its share price, while rival Apple stock is at a 10-month high. There are real problems here, not just with the phone and the recall, but with Samsung's overall reputation. Let's start with this from Harry Fawcett in Seoul.
Samsung may have called time on the Galaxy Note 7, but that hasn't stopped the flow of damaging new videos. This one purports to show a Note 7 giving off clouds of smoke as its panicked owner rushes it to the kitchen. Shortly afterwards, she's seen apparently fainting. In a country some call the Republic of Samsung, where millions use its devices every day, this shock to the nation's #1 brand has hit home.
South Korea went through extra fast growth, and there is a tendency to rush things, even when it comes to technology.
Samsung will lose some public confidence, but if they deal with this properly and not with stopgap measures, they will regain trust.
Samsung isn't just any company here. It towers over the domestic economy. Samsung Electronics might be its dominant constituent part, but the Samsung Group is made up of dozens of companies, everything from construction to shipbuilding to financial services and more. As a whole, its revenues are equivalent to about a fifth of the South Korean economy.
It's completely cooked.
So to what extent has all this damaged brand Korea, especially at a time when the government is pushing that brand as one of creativity and innovation? One marketing expert, himself reluctant to turn off and return his own week-old Note 7, says Samsung's instruction to do just that and end production may have minimized the problem.
The damaged brand image of Samsung may not expanded to the negative image of Korea, I think. Okay? So in that sense, Samsung's decision was right.
Still, consumers used to keeping Samsung's phones in their pockets might need some convincing to stick with the brand when they're being told now to return the devices in multi-layered, heat-proof packaging. The best way to recover brand value, say experts, is a quick and transparent uncovering of the Note 7's dangerous defect in order to reassure consumers it won't be repeated.
So as Samsung is quickly discovering, product recalls are a costly business. Just think about some of these ones as a reminder. Toyota, the Japanese car maker, has had a number of recalls, from faulty switches that caught fire to unintended accelerations linked to fatal accidents. Millions of its cars had to be recalled, and when you combine that with the class action suits, it's estimated to have cost Toyota about $3.2 billion. What about Pfizer, the US pharmaceutical company? 4 settlements in 7 years. Back in 2009, it agreed to pay $2 billion in fines and a $1.3 billion penalty for illegally marketing the painkiller Bextra, as well as other drugs. Takata may not have heard of this Japanese auto parts company, but as of September, it had recalled nearly 300 million airbag inflators. That was after 9 people died after being hit by metal and plastic shrapnel from faulty airbag components. Takata says its worst-case costs could exceed $26 billion. And of course, Volkswagen, the German automaker, faced with the prospect of fixing 11 million cars after it emerged the software on some models had been programmed to reduce nitrogen oxide levels during emissions testing. Cheating, basically. VW set aside about $7.3 billion to cover the recall, while acknowledging it might not be enough when all costs are tallied. But what none of this takes into account is the reputational damage to a brand, the kind of damage which can have a big impact on the company's value and give competitors an unexpected advantage. That's what we're wondering about Samsung right now, and Robert Haigh is with us to talk about it. He's with the London-based consultancy Brand Finance. Robert, part of me thinks, oh, poor old Samsung, because, you know, this is a position obviously no company wants to be in. But really, in the end, exploding batteries, phones on fire, people getting injured, this is major, major stuff, and it is certainly not anything that Samsung could try to hide from.
Yes, it is a major catastrophe, you might say, for them, but I don't think it's fair to say that they have attempted to hide from this. They have taken the extremely drastic step of issuing a very public statement to ask all their customers to, you know, effectively take the nuclear option and turn off their phones, stop using them and stop buying Samsung's a flagship phone.
Yeah, do you know though, Robert, I would question that, because I personally didn't feel that Samsung was public enough. You know, I know, as you've said, there was a strong statement put out. But in this day and age, you know, their numerous Twitter feeds weren't up to date. Their websites were still showing the Note 7. And, you know, I don't recall seeing anyone from Samsung in front of a camera saying, we're sorry, unlike, say, what you've seen with Toyota in the past.
That's true. I mean, in terms of a public engagement point of view, there are certainly lessons that Samsung can learn. I suppose the idea that they've hidden is perhaps an overstatement, but certainly the idea that they haven't communicated effectively enough is a fair criticism. And they probably will suffer somewhat in terms of consumer trust as a result of that. We do expect at Brand Finance a significant hit to Samsung's brand strength and brand value in the short term as a result of this. However, their customers are extremely loyal, and some of the small amount of research that we've been able to do in the time since this scandal broke suggests that their existing customers won't be put off in the long term from buying their products.
When you say that you've done research and that you believe there will be a brand impact, how do you measure that? Can you give us a bit of insight perhaps into how you measure what the impact might be beyond the financial costs and the profit warnings?
So there are a number of different metrics that go into our brand strength index, and there's a lot of third-party market research that's done to look at how customers feel about a brand's reputation for trustworthiness, the safety of their products and the track record that they have. And then we can look at past examples of similar cases. So for example, Toyota, its Prius car has been the subject of numerous recalls, as have some other models in the recent past. However, what we've seen with the trend of their brand value is that though there was a 16% drop in 2009 after the first sort of major series of incidents, Toyota have actually recovered that brand value because overall there's still a very strong affinity between its consumers and the brand, and still a high level of trust that Toyota is an effective communicator and ultimately safe.
So what you're saying in that Toyota example, and I think with Samsung as well, is that there is a lot of brand loyalty. Samsung customers love their phones, they upgrade them, they stay with the brand. Here's the thing though, how would Samsung attract new customers now? You know, I look at my own phone and I think, well, even if I wasn't such a devoted Apple user as I am, I wouldn't buy a Samsung phone now because, you know, they catch fire. That's the immediate feeling.
Yes, there will be a very significant problem with market share in the short term. But the truth is that in Western mature markets, there is already a very high saturation of smartphones. So there is limited scope for the attraction of new customers, really. So if we were talking, say, in 2008, 9, 10, 11, when this was very much still an open field and we had numerous different players, this might have been much more damaging for Samsung. But they've had the ability to build up a track record and build up a very significant base and market share that means they're somewhat protected.
Okay, but having said that, is there an opportunity here for Apple, for Huawei, for HTC, for LG, all these other phone makers? Is there now just a little extra gap in the market?
There is a market, there is an opportunity for Apple. I mean, the really significant battle is between Apple and Samsung, and they will capture a certain amount of market share in the shorter term, which may lead to customer retention in the longer term. However, our prognosis for Samsung at the moment is an optimistic one.
Well, one place where Samsung and other mobile companies are targeting is Nigeria, where around 150 million subscribers spent more than $1.5 billion on handsets alone last year. Africa's largest mobile phone market is a fast-growing, lucrative one for investors, contributing about $4.5 billion to Nigeria's economy in the first quarter of this year. All that growth, though, has led to problems with network congestion and quality of service. It's prompted the telecom regulator there to impose fines and sanctions on operators. The operators say they are responding, though, by investing billions in improving infrastructure. One man with a deep knowledge of the Nigerian mobile phone market is Bassem Haider, who joins us now from London. He is the founder and CEO of the Channel IT Group, which, Bassem, actually maybe I'll let you explain. Why don't you give us a brief overview of how you got started? Because, well, I can see here that you started in the early 90s in Nigeria, where by today's standards, technology must have been incredibly primitive. Tell us how you all started.
Yeah, I guess growing up in Africa and understanding these market needs, which are basically any emerging market needs, be it in Latin America or the Middle East or Africa, was the philosophy of building platforms and building services that are needed in these markets, not just an idea that comes up. So it's an idea that is conceived from basic needs of people. And because of the lack of infrastructure in these markets, we tend to build platforms that provide services, bring people back into the banking, into financial inclusion systems. And we don't see ourselves as disruptors. I'm sure a lot of the press have been talking about disruption in emerging markets, where new tech companies are disrupting banks or disrupting financial institutions. We see ourselves actually the complete opposite, because if there's nothing to disrupt, there's no infrastructure to disrupt. You can only build. The potential for growth in these markets using mobile technologies and using what we call the soft infrastructure is just limitless the way it is right now.
Okay, so let's go back to what you said about the lack of infrastructure, because I can certainly understand the point you make about not being disruptive because there's nothing to disrupt. But when you say lack of infrastructure, to what extent? How much is missing?
Typically, if you look at, let's take the fintech space, which is today gearing towards mobile. So, for example, banks in very large countries will only focus on the very urban areas. There's a lot of density where the money is. But the reality is maybe only 20% of the population lives in urban areas, and on the suburbs, there are less branches, less banks, and in the rural areas, you can forget about banks. And we have created something that we call the loop. And the loop is a strategy where from your mobile number, you can do a whole life cycle of services. So you can borrow money, you can purchase goods, you can pay for electricity on a daily basis, you can pay school fees, tuitions, etc. And basically bypassing the whole infrastructure needs that don't exist today and very much doubt they will exist in the next 20 or 30 years.
Okay, Bassem, so what I'm getting from you are the basics. Infrastructure, getting everyone connected, that sort of thing. Now, to that end, is the latest technology important to you? When Apple releases iPhone 7 or Samsung Galaxy Note 7, which is obviously having huge problems itself, is this sort of stuff important to you and to your business, or are you stepping back from that, not quite at that cutting edge?
Technology progressing at the pace it is today is great, but that only applies to the developed world. If you look at emerging markets generally, let's take Africa as an example. If you exclude South Africa, smartphone penetration is only about 11% today. So you have almost 90% that are feature phones. Are we saying we should exclude these people from the financial systems? Are we saying we should exclude these people from social media? No, we've developed technologies that allows us to focus on these feature phones. And yes, if you do upgrade to smartphones, great. Now, mobile operators have a significant problem today. They pay large fees for licenses of 3G and 4G, but they're not able to send that throughput to the population because of the lack of smartphones. So we started just about 4 months ago using our analytics platform to lend money to customers so they could buy semi-smartphones, meaning they could get very easily do their banking, get very easily on social media. They can download apps from the, say, the Android app stores or the Google stores and so on. So it is coming, and it's purely a matter of the price of smartphones have reduced drastically over the last 1 year. And once it hits a threshold, which is usually about $40 to $60, that's when you're going to see a big market penetration. So right now, it's not a very important factor in places like Africa, some of the Middle Eastern countries. But then we work in Saudi Arabia, where you have a huge base of smartphones, for example, which our technology also works very well.
Bassem Haigh, very interesting talking to you today. Thank you. And still ahead on Counting the Cost, the US soft drinks giants who donate millions to public health groups and then lobby against efforts to tackle the obesity epidemic. Right now, though, we're looking at aviation, and indeed aviation in our own backyard. Because last week, Qatar Airways spent $18.6 billion on up to 100 brand new aeroplanes. For Boeing, it was one of its largest ever orders, but for Qatar, it was kind of business as usual, that business being expansion. Already in just 20 years, the airline has gone from 4 planes to 188, which means an extremely young fleet. Flies to 150 destinations, which are estimated to have brought in annual revenues of $9.6 billion last year, helped in part by being the 3rd largest air cargo operator in the world. And to keep up with all that, Qatar recently moved into the $15.5 billion Hamad International Airport, which keeps it alongside Dubai and Abu Dhabi as a major Gulf transit hub. Well, Akbar Al-Bakr is Qatar Airways' always forthright CEO. He spoke to our correspondent Paddy Culhane in Washington after the big Boeing announcement.
Boeing, obviously you talked about their product. They have mastered the skill of lobbying the U.S. Congress by having some part of some product made in every congressional district. There are very few companies that have the lobbying prowess or power that Boeing has. Do you think this could help you if the Open Skies debate reignites?
Boeing has been very fair. Open Sky is beneficial not only to Boeing but to the larger business community, to the huge diaspora that you have here from our region, from the subcontinent. And Open Sky also promotes trade. So I don't think there is anything that Boeing did to lobby the government not to be protectionist, but protectionist will only harm the business interest of the companies, not only Boeing, but all business communities in the United States. The liberal open skies policy that exists between our two governments has been strictly complied by Qatar Airways. We have not violated any single clause of that open sky regime. So whatever was questioned about us violating the provisions of the open sky was not correct.
You've obviously been a little vocal about Airbus and the delays. You said it's going to hurt your bottom line. What is your revenue and your profit projections for this coming fiscal year?
We will still be profitable. Again, we will declare a profit, but how much it will be at the moment I cannot say, because we are only 5 months into our new financial year, so I have to wait. But as of today, we are positive, but we are not as positive as we would have been if Airbus would have delivered the aeroplanes to us on time. So we have taken a massive hit to our bottom line because of the delays of Airbus. And no matter of liquidated damages that we will claim from Airbus will cater to narrow the gap that it has created because of their failure in delivering aeroplanes to us.
By any measure, $18.6 billion is an absolutely enormous business deal. Are you sending a message to Airbus?
No, we don't send any messages to anybody. We always look at what is the best in the interest of our business, and accordingly we will act. We will not protect or go against the interest of any aircraft manufacturer.
You said you will not renege on your contracts with Airbus, but given that you've placed this enormous order with Boeing, can Airbus assume that if they're one day late with the next delivery, then that order is going to be canceled?
We will continue to cancel our orders, which allows us contractually to do so. We will not cancel any order because we are ordering aeroplanes from Boeing. We have a contract. It gives us remedies in the contract, and if any aircraft manufacturer, be it Boeing or Airbus, don't deliver to us aeroplanes in line with the contract that we have signed with them, yes, we will exercise our option of walking away from those airplanes.
If Airbus is able to get the engine manufacturer in order and they are able to start delivering on time, can you actually afford both of these?
They're already late, so I don't know how they will deliver it to us on time. Yes, they have some work to do with their aircraft, with their engine manufacturers, and I'm sure Airbus will do it in the best interest of their company.
Now, I'm sure you realize the International Civil Aviation Organization came out with a cap and trade. I think it was just yesterday or maybe the day before.
Day before.
How is that going to impact your bottom line? Can you really, I mean, you're going to take a hit with that, yes?
We have fought long and hard to bring sense to the ICAO General Assembly to tell them that they should not penalize airlines like us that are continuously renewing our fleet with more fuel efficient and less emission emitting aeroplanes.
So what does it look like in 10 years? How many planes do you have?
Well, I think that in the next 3 years, we will have, our fleet will grow from 196 aeroplanes today to over 250 aircraft. Because all these aeroplanes that we are ordering is not all growth aeroplanes, they're also fleet replacement, because Qatar Airways has a strategy to keep the average age of our fleet below 5 years. The current average age of our fleet is only 4 years and 2 months.
That's very, I'm not an expert, but what is the industry average? It's not 5 years.
The industry average is over 15 years.
So why 5?
To have more fuel efficient so that we can comply with the emission controls that is being put by ICAO.
There's been some concern about the Dreamliner, the safety of the Dreamliner. You've obviously not all. Should your passengers be concerned?
Not at all. Qatar Airways would never operate an aircraft that is not safe for us and our passengers and my crew. Dreamliner is one of the safest airplanes. I don't think that either Boeing or FAA or EASA, the European regulator, would approve these aeroplanes to fly in their airspace if they were unsafe.
Finally this week, the World Health Organization is urging countries to impose a tax on sugary drinks to try to curb a growing obesity crisis. But what we're also learning is how the drinks companies, principally Coke and Pepsi, are perhaps trying to influence that in a sort of backhanded way. We'll let Shihab Ratanzi explain more now from Washington, D.C.
This is the first comprehensive survey of Coke and Pepsi's donations to health organizations. Over a 5-year period, the authors found that the two companies had given millions of dollars to 96 organizations.
On the one hand, these organizations are supposed to be combating obesity. On the other hand, they're actually taking part in a marketing activity of the soda companies, which serves to promote soda consumption.
The organizations include the American Diabetes Association, the National Institutes of Health, childhood obesity groups, health and fitness groups for children, even charities like Save the Children, which received $5 million from Coke and Pepsi in 2009 and then withdrew its support for a tax on sugary drinks the following year. The US suffers from one of the highest rates of obesity in the world. A major contributory factor is sugary drinks. The US is one of the highest per capita consumers in the world. Federal and state laws have been proposed to regulate their marketing and directly to tax sugary drinks to make it less attractive as a beverage choice and also finance healthcare. In fact, on the same day this study was released, the World Health Organization recommended a 20% increase in the price of sugary drinks to help combat obesity, diabetes, and tooth decay.
You tax the beverages, and use the money to promote health, to support health systems, especially if it's targeted at the vulnerable and the poor.
Both Coke and Pepsi have lobbied against such measures. One of the report's authors says that as a result of their financial donations, they received the backing, or at the very least, a lack of opposition from unlikely quarters.
This is something that we've seen with the tobacco industry, we've seen it with the alcohol industry. Anytime you're funded by an entity, it's going to change your view of that entity, and it's going to soften any kind of opposition that you have to them.
The health organizations, though, deny any linkage between the donations and their public policy positions. Representatives for Coke accept that the company opposes what it calls discriminatory taxes, but insists that the donations were designed to, quote, strengthen communities. Pepsi says it has an important role in addressing obesity, which is a, quote, multifaceted issue.
And that is our show for this week. More for you online, though, at aljazeera.com/CTC. That takes you straight to our page, which has individual reports, links and entire episodes for you to catch up on. You can also get in touch with us. You can tweet me at KamalAJE. Do use the hashtag AJCTC when you do, or just drop us an email. Counting the Cost at aljazeera.net is the address. That is it for this edition of Counting the Cost. I'm Kamal Santamaria from the whole team. Thanks for joining us. The news on Al Jazeera is next.